Ministers, Deputies, Councillors and Delegates, my name is Brendan Wise. I'm a local election candidate for Clane area in Kildare. I live in a rural community and I live on a private road, as do many of my neighbours. My own road is maintained by the residents and a local businessman to a satisfactory standard, but some of the neighbouring roads have deteriorated to the point where significant investment is now needed. The local improvement scheme provides us with a means to work with the local authority to have the road repaired, but there is no requirement for the local authority to take the road in charge following the repairs. Residents on private roads pay development levies to the local authority at time of building and subsequently pay road tax and local property tax, but the roads outside their homes are their own responsibility. My question is, can we as a party put some focus on finding a permanent solution to the issue of private roads? Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. And we might just open up to Minister McEntee to, from your perspective, being from Meath and your impact on conversation around rural development.
Indeed, thank you, Maria, and thank you to Brendan for the question. I see some people from Meath here in the audience, and in particular people from North Meath who are nodding their heads and in agreement, I think, with this particular question and request. When I first ran for election back in 2013, I had a huge amount of support and people who travelled from all over the country to canvass, and for a long time afterwards I met people who said it was a pleasure to canvass and it was great to be in Meath, but my God, what's going on with the roads, in particular in North Meath, and they were right. What we had seen was years of underinvestment and continuous underinvestment from previous Fianna Fáil governments, and a mixture of bad weather meant that literally roads were impassable, and what might seem like a small issue for many people was massive when you're trying to get out of your house and when you can't drive down your own road because of potholes. I had people come to me, as I'm sure many of my colleagues have, where they had people in hospital and the difficulty in coming in and out of the house, or even kids on bikes and people in wheelchairs to be able to go up and down the road. So it's a massive, massive issue, and something that I think can only be addressed by an increase in funding, an increase in investment, but not just for short periods of time. It needs to be sustained and it needs to be increased continuously. And I think what we've seen, and thankfully the calls that I get from our roads are less and less, and the issue is less and less because we have invested, because there is less need to repair what really has gone to the stage which is beyond the point of no return. The only way that we can do that is by increasing the investment in our local authorities, which has happened over, I think, the past 10 years. As our questioner, Brendan, has rightly said, people pay their taxes, their road taxes, they pay contributions. They shouldn't have to be paying more on top of that. And I think specifically to talk about the LIS, because again, I think Meath probably has one of the highest application percentage numbers in terms of applying for the LIS. That has only come down the line itself as a scheme because the fact that our rural and our regional and our national roads were being addressed and being fixed, and there was that extra bit of money available, but still people had to contribute and to pay on top of that. So I think until we get, I suppose, to the point of investment where our regional, our national, our local roads were on top of those, where we're then able to take the scheme in itself, that people don't have to contribute and that councils can take them on themselves, that's the point that I would like to see us get to, and I think that's where most people would like to get to. But again, we're not fully there yet, but we've invested a huge amount over the past 10 years, and that's because of the huge amount of work the previous government and now this current government and the focus that's been on it.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm going to just ask Minister Ring to come in on this, simply because we all know he takes to the roads quite often, given his connection and his portfolio of rural development, and I would just love to hear your insights.
Well, look, Maria, sorry. First of all, I want to say that I'm the one in my department that reintroduced the LIS scheme again. Now, I did look for support across other departments, and I see Brendan here, and I've spoke to the senior minister in that department, and I felt that they should have matched my funding. In fact, what they're doing now is letting me run the scheme, and it's a substantial amount of money out of my budget. But what I do need is the Department of Transport to come up, and I need them to match. And also, I've had discussions with the local authorities. And Brendan asked a very good question. The reason that I reintroduced the local improvement scheme again, because there was a massive demand for it. There's pressure all over the country. And one of the ways I did it, I thought I was doing it fairly, and it's something I'm going to look at again. I gave every county 250,000, and then I topped it up. But to be fair, there is counties like Meath, even Leitrim and Mayo and like the likes of Cork wouldn't have as many LIS roads as we have in some of the rural counties. And I need to look at ways of actually giving the counties that have the bigger demand for LIS schemes more funding. And there's counties that are getting the top up and they don't really need as much money, and yet there's other counties that need a lot more. Now, I did make a number of changes in the LIS scheme. The first one I made, I took the local contribution down from 20%. If it was 5 houses or more, it went down to 10%, and I reduced the 20% one down to 15%. And I made a further change in the last round. In some cases, you could have roads that were costing up to 40,000. There could be a local contribution of 4,000. I think that's very unfair if there's 2 or 3 households on a road and they have to make that kind of a contribution. They pay their property tax. That in 90% of the time, they pay the water. They have to pay their own private water, and they shouldn't have to be paying lots of money to do the road as well. In relation to the local authorities that are taking over off the road, there was a time the local authorities used to take it over if the road was brought up to a standard, Brendan. And the local authorities don't really want to be taking over roads anymore because they're not able to maintain the ones they have. So that's something I need to sit down with. But I need to sit down with a partnership now, and the partnership is going to be with the Department of Transport and the councils, because I also find that the council are charging a substantial amount of a fee to administer the scheme, and they're also charging lots of money to, there's different rates around the country, as my inspector found, in relation to what they're charging for the price per square metre of tar. So I know if there's one scheme I know a lot about it, the LIS. What I'm saying is we need a partnership on this. We need the local authorities to put some of their own funding in. We need the Department of Transport to put some funding in, and I will continue from my department to keep the LIS scheme going.